Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing with obviously a lot to talk about today with Tropical Storm Delta organizing to the southwest of Jamaica. We still have Tropical Storm Gamma, too, just to the north of the Yucatan Peninsula. Both tropical cyclones are about the same intensity, and it looks like they're going to undergo Fujiwara interaction with Tropical Storm Gamma settling to the southwest along the northwestern coast of the Yucatan, and then an intensifying Tropical Storm Delta, likely Hurricane Delta by the time it's approaching the western tip of Cuba, maybe even the northern tip of the Yucatan. And so as a stronger tropical cyclone Delta approaches that gap between the Yucatan and Cuba, those two tropical cyclones are going to initiate Fujiwara interaction. That's going to help pull Gamma off to the south. Could help deflect deflect Delta's path a little bit to the left from what it would be if there was not a tropical storm Gamma in the Bay of Campeche at the time. So that could lead to a little bit further west of a track, and then some of the models are even showing Gamma coming in behind Delta after they interact through Fujiwara interaction. Gamma could be coming in right on its heels. There definitely is a lot of discrepancies within the forecast models on how Gamma is going to evolve after a Delta comes in, but it does look like there's going to be two tropical cyclones that we're going to have to keep an eye on. There is a chance that Gamma could just dissipate very near the land of the northwestern Yucatan, and that would mean that a tropical cyclone Delta would be even a more dominant tropical cyclone as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. But here's the official forecast track for Delta, which does appear to be organizing in the western Caribbean to the southwest of Jamaica. It is going to be a relatively fast-moving tropical cyclone as well. That is relatively common, more common at least in the late season. But this curve off to the northeast that happens with Delta is not necessarily because of an approaching trough, but it's more just on the western side of a subtropical ridge that has expanded off to the west across the southeastern U.S. and into the northern Gulf of Mexico behind a trough that today is ejecting off the mid-Atlantic, and that's allowing this anticyclone here to build off to the west. And that's going to also act to block a earlier turn to the north of Delta and should help to save the west coast of Florida. Still, though, if you do live anywhere in the Gulf Coast, from Texas all the way through the west coast of Florida, you want to keep an eye on Delta and Gamma as well here throughout the course of this week, through late week, through the weekend. It's very possible that a Gamma could just kind of sit down here off the northwestern tip of the Yucatan. It could help to bend Delta back to the west a bit, and then it'll curve to the north, and then Gamma could come right up into on its heels and even strengthen just a little bit, and then move into the central Gulf Coast region. But this looks like right now the National Hurricane Center is showing a Category 2 storm on approach to the central Gulf of Mexico. There is some cooler water right near the shoreline, though, that dips below about 27 degrees Celsius. And if that happens, that could act to weaken this hurricane just a little bit. But one thing is that with this hurricane moving quite rapidly, it's not going to have a lot of residence time over those cooler waters right along the Gulf Coast, and it is going to be moving relatively fast. There are some easterly winds at the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere that are about 20 to 30 knots, but with this hurricane moving off to the west-northwest at potentially 15 to 20 knots, that's going to reduce the storm relative wind shear and likely open the door for rapid intensification between the Yucatan and Cuba, possibly earlier. This environment out ahead of the storm is quite prime for rapid intensification. Sea surface temperatures are near 30 degrees C there. Wind shear is weak. It's incredibly moist, not a lot of dry air. There is still a little bit of dry air at the mid and upper levels, but that's going to be going away as that storm moves off to the west-northwest. And it is starting to get better organized down here to the southwest of Jamaica, as I'm going to show you right now on satellite here on Radar Omega. And look at that convective burst right near the center of this storm. It's definitely starting to get that look. This is a pretty substantial convective burst right here, pretty close to the center of Delta. Likely the first signs of an organizing or potentially rapidly intensifying tropical storm Delta that is going to move off to the west-northwest. We were even considering going to Cuba yesterday and going to the very western tip of Cuba, but we're just concerned that with the virus, we'd probably be quarantined for at least 2 weeks at the airport there. Also, possibly, it looks like Delta could pass over the open waters between Cuba and the Yucatan, which, even though that would put us in the stronger side of the tropical cyclone near the western tip of Cuba, maybe near the Isle of Youth, there also is a chance that you could get burnt, and this tropical cyclone could pass over the open waters between Cuba and the Yucatan. So it is forecast to become a hurricane, and likely a rapidly intensifying hurricane as it approaches that gap between Cuba and the Yucatan. Likely will start to peak there as it enters into the southern Gulf of Mexico, maybe the central Gulf of Mexico, and then it could pass in to those cooler sea surface temperatures that are located right near the Gulf of Mexico shoreline. And here is the center right now of Beta. That's located right here, well to the south of that convective blob as well. I could show you some visible satellite that'll definitely show that center a little bit better since it's decoupled so much from that convective blob. And look at that center of Tropical Storm Gamma, completely decoupled from its convection. The convection is well to the north of it now. It has ingested a lot of dry air. It's pretty close to the northern tip of the Yucatan as well, which has helped to do a number on it. But you could see Gamma sliding off to the west-southwest. It's going to be very close to land, if not over land of the northwestern Yucatan. And still, though, this cyclone is formidable enough to cause Fujiwara interaction with Delta approaching from the southeast, and that could cause Gamma to bend off to the southwest, meander over the northwestern Yucatan, and then once Delta moves by, then Gamma will turn off to the north, and it's possible it could reemerge over the southern Gulf of Mexico, re-intensify, and even potentially threaten the Gulf Coast there, the southern coastline. But here is the convective plume well to the north, more like a convergence band or a predecessor rain event there over the open Gulf of Mexico. That could bring some showers and thunderstorms across the western coast of Florida during the day today. But it looks like Gamma, the low-level center, is heading off to the west-southwest. Right now it's got max sustained winds of about 40 miles an hour, and it's going to continue to weaken, likely becoming a depression here by tomorrow afternoon, maybe even by later today. But right now it is a tropical storm. This, though, is the track here. This is the track of Delta, which is likely going to be a hurricane by this point, a rapidly intensifying hurricane that will pass between Cuba and the Yucatan, and then it'll turn to the north on the western side of that ridge, accelerate 15 to 20 knots. And that acceleration is crucial because there is some cooler water just off the shoreline. And here are the latest sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. And definitely you can see those cooler water temperatures are right along the Gulf Coast. Those are up here, sub 27 degrees. Here are the water temperatures 28 degrees C and higher. And really you want to watch that area of 28 degrees C because you get below 28 degrees C and it usually has a negative impact on tropical cyclone intensity. Greater than 28 degrees C, they're able to intensify. That diabatic heating max that is the ocean surface is sufficient enough to fuel that heat engine or the in this case, a vertically stacked tropical cyclone that will be passing over these very warm waters. But look at these waters down here above 30 degrees Celsius in the Western Caribbean and between Cuba and the Yucatan. Those are incredibly warm waters. Wind shear is going to be extremely weak. So I think we're about to see a rapid intensification event for Delta as it passes over this prime environment to the south and to the west of Cuba. And even the southern Gulf of Mexico is quite prime, 28, 29, 30 degrees C. Ocean temperatures, and Delta is sliding along the northwestern side of the Yucatan, even some warm water down there, but it has some land interaction and definitely is pulling in some of that dry air that has dominated the western and northern parts of the Gulf of Mexico. But these cold water temperatures here across the north central Gulf of Mexico should have a negative effect on Delta as it passes into this region, but it's going to be moving at 15 to 20 knots, so not a substantial residence time over these relatively cooler waters right along the Gulf of Mexico, so it's probably not going to have that much of an impact on Delta as it approaches, accelerates, and turning off to the northeast on the western periphery of that Bermuda High. So my plan is to leave tomorrow in Dominator 4. I'm going to head east toward the central Gulf Coast. My plan is to intercept Hurricane Delta and maybe a tropical cyclone Gamma on its heels. But that's my plan. I'm going to be bringing the microbarometer, the subsonic sensor. Mark is still feverishly trying to finish the Surgeonator, our live streaming storm surge probe. This one's coming in a little bit faster. I was hoping that this hurricane would be delayed until about the October 10th through 12th time period. If that were to happen, then I easily would have the Surgeonator in my hands before I leave tomorrow. But there is a chance that Mark's going to have to send it to me in the field. I'll have to pick it up between here and the target area, deploy the Surgeonator, get that live storm surge data. And if it's not ready for this storm, there's always going to be more storms down the horizon. Probably those nor'easter type hybrids lifting north along the east coast. Those a lot of times will have coastal flooding and storm surges. Would be a great environment to test the Surgeonator. But I'm really, really hoping to have it ready to go in time for this hurricane. Mark is doing everything in his power to make it happen. He's been working day and night, pretty much nonstop, trying to get the Surgeonator ready to go. So keep your fingers crossed that it'll be ready to go for this hurricane. No doubt there's going to be a substantial storm surge if it's coming in as a Category 1 or 2 storm. Here is the GFS. This is the current, basically the initialized GFS as of last night. This is the 6Z run. I do believe that the 12Z runs should be out. I saw that it was coming out as I was putting this together. And here you can see some binary interaction that's clearly happening here. This is the low-level center. This is the 850 millibar map here of the operational GFS. Here you can see Gamma just to the north of the Yucatan. And here is the organizing Tropical Storm Delta just to the southwest of Jamaica. Stepping forward 6 hours to this afternoon. Look at this thing organized. Delta appears, based on satellite with that convective burst, that it certainly is the initial sign of rapid intensification. Gamma, of course, is going to be steady state, completely decoupled from its convection, probably is going to weaken. The GFS is definitely hinting at rapid intensification this afternoon through evening of a Hurricane Delta. And as we go overnight tonight through tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about a powerful hurricane to the south of Cuba, a weakening, likely tropical depression, Gamma, that's just going to settle in along the rainforest there of the northwestern tip of the Yucatan. Delta is becoming by far the dominant tropical cyclone. That's going to happen later on today, overnight tonight. By tomorrow morning, we're likely going to see an incredibly organized tropical cyclone that's getting closer to the western tip of Cuba. It looks like it's going to miss the Isle of Youth and the western tip of Cuba, and in fact, the 12Z GFS is trending a little bit further west with even a potential landfall near Cozumel or the northern tip of the Yucatan, and that further west track is definitely encouraged by a tropical depression Gamma that's going to settle down into the western tip of the Yucatan and likely dissipate after a dominant Delta moves by. And then Delta is going to continue to strengthen over the warm waters of the southern Gulf of Mexico, which, as I just showed you, 28, 29 degrees Celsius, perfectly symmetric storm system there by the operational GFS. The ensembles are in quite strong agreement. But look at this further west track. Even Texas is in play here. This is Thursday afternoon. That hurricane is just off the Texas coast. And there you can see it accelerates and turns off to the northeast. And the scary thing is that most of the models are showing another Louisiana landfall. And in fact, these westward trend here, the GFS is even hinting at a landfall of a powerful hurricane across southwestern Louisiana. That's an area that was ravaged by Hurricane Laura, continues to undergo a long road of recovery out there across southwestern Louisiana. But this latest GFS weakens Gamma over the western Yucatan, so at least it's not going to have a Gamma following right in its heels in the feeder band of a Hurricane Delta. Having Gamma come in right in its heels would definitely put salt on the wound out there. Even just having a strong hurricane coming in to southwestern Louisiana like that is certainly a dangerous situation. Hopefully, and this is probably not going to happen, but that little ribbon of cooler sea surface temperatures from that latest cold frontal passage, I don't think that it's going to have very much of an impact on this powerful tropical cyclone that's coming in. It's probably going to be a Hurricane Rita type situation where It might be steady state, maybe peaking just offshore. It's starting to come down a bit, but still a potential catastrophic hurricane that's going to come in there with a lot of intensification happening in the Western Caribbean. Looking at a model sounding out ahead right now, really all you can see are these 25, 30 knot upper level winds out of the due east. This thing's moving east to west right now at 7 to 10 miles an hour. Forward speed's going to accelerate, so the storm relative wind shear over this cyclone is only going to dissipate and weaken, so that's going to be primed for a rapid intensification type of an event. Here are the hurricane models showing the forecast track. Strong agreement here for Delta, but again, the latest GFS that's coming in is taking a shift even a little bit further to the west, so I wouldn't be surprised if these hurricane models follow suit. And Cozumel, Cancun, you guys are still in play for a potential direct impact from a rapidly intensifying hurricane here. So keep a very close eye on this. If you live in the northern Yucatan, Cozumel, Cancun, Playa del Carmen, the western tip of Cuba as well. But right now the models are taking it right through the gap, at least the hurricane models, and then an acceleration, a turn to the north, and then to the northeast along the western periphery of that Bermuda High. Intensity forecasts, one of the stronger signals that we've seen all season. So rapid intensification is going to happen as it heads toward the southern Gulf of Mexico and on approach to that gap between the Yucatan and Cuba. A couple of these members are showing a big, even stronger intensification. The official National Hurricane Center forecast takes it up to a Category 2 on approach to the central Gulf Coast. Just wanted to show you a quick update here. This is our last night's model runs, but interestingly, the GFS was showing a reinvigorated gamma after just meandering around the northwestern tip of the Yucatan and interacting through Fujiwara, interaction with Delta passing right here. Once Delta passes by, then a gamma could reinvigorate and head to the north in its wake and potentially head in the same area. Right now, and the new GFS actually weakens this. It's backed off of this scenario quite a bit, actually weakens gamma over the northwestern tip of the Yucatan and dissipating and completely losing its identity over the land. That's probably the most likely scenario, but there is a chance that gamma could maintain its identity just enough that it could lift to the north behind a dominant Hurricane Delta, which by this time would be continuing to the northeast, probably with a tornado and an inland flooding threat that could impact portions of Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, northern Georgia, eventually up into the central and southern Appalachians. So definitely a pattern that could have major problems for the U.S. Central Gulf Coast, and I would say that the chances of major problems are definitely increasing dramatically. Wanted to give you another look on the visible satellite of a beautiful tropical storm gamma that continues to weaken as it's sliding off to the west-southwest. And then let's look at the satellite imagery of tropical storm Delta, likely to become a hurricane as early as tonight. Later on today, you can see that convective burst getting flung around the northern side of the circulation within these easterlies. There is just a little bit of dry air that we saw in that sounding that I just showed you that's getting pulled into the circulation. But with this convective burst, I expect this tropical cyclone to develop a very symmetric, well-defined, vertically stacked inner core, and it's going to rapidly intensify as it heads toward the gap between the Yucatan and Cuba. It's definitely getting that look as if rapid intensification is underway. Definitely beginning to be a well-formed tropical cyclone. Feeder band coming in on the south side here as well. Well-defined feeder bands. It seemed to be the north side of the core was a little bit anemic during a lot overnight through the first part of today through the morning. But now with this convective burst here on the north side of the center, that is showing that the inner core is definitely getting more vertically stacked, more symmetric, better organized, and this thing's going to rapidly intensify, probably being a major hurricane by the time it approaches that gap between Cuba and the Yucatan. So again, this is the official National Hurricane Center track. Adjustment is definitely possible and likely as this storm evolves over the coming days. And a possible shift just a little bit to the west could happen. That at least the GFS is starting to hint at that. That maybe the role of Fujiwara interaction and that that anticyclone to the north, building to the west across the northern Gulf of Mexico could be more strong than earlier models were hinting. The upper Texas coast is still definitely in play, and that includes the Houston area. Keep a very close eye on Delta as it enters the Gulf of Mexico, because the timing of that northward turn, which is dependent on how far west that anticyclone is able to build through the Gulf of Mexico, still a lot of variables that could dictate changes with this forecast track, and that's why that cone of uncertainty stretches from basically the upper Texas coast all the way to the Florida Panhandle. So thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to my weather reports. I'm going to be hitting the road tomorrow, and then I'll be doing these updates from the field, and I'll be targeting the central Gulf Coast to intercept a Hurricane Delta. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your Monday.